Okay, when we are simplifying, we're going to take the expression and break it up into its parts. So we have a number here in front of the x squared. So we're going to treat this as a coefficient of x squared. So we're going to write 1 square root 20. So that way this is gone and this is gone. And then I'm going to pull the x's to the side. So we're going to have an x squared and an x to the fourth on the inside. And then finally, I have a y to the fourth on the inside. Now, over here, we're going to break this up as square root of 4 times the square root of 5. 4 is a perfect square. That's why I went with that. Square root of 4, that gives you 2. Square root of 5, you cannot break it down any smaller. So it's 2 square root 5. Then I go to the x's. The x squared doesn't change, so it's still x squared. The x to the fourth is even, so we're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to have x squared again, and this is gone because it was even. So now x squared and x squared is what gives us x to the fourth. And then we have this y to the fourth. Again, 4 is even, so we divide it by 2. So we're going to have y squared. That drops the square root. And that just leaves us with y squared. We're not going to be able to take this any simpler. Now we're going to put it all back together. We have a 2 outside. We have x to the fourth. We have y to the second. And then the only thing left is square root of 5 on the inside. So this is the final simplified form. Okay, let's jump over here to question 3. It says, assuming x and y are both positive, write the following expression in simplest radical form. So first thing I want to do is I want to take the coefficients out. So 5 and 4 by themselves. Then I'm going to take the x to the fourth. I'm going to put my x's together. There's only an x to the fourth on the inside. And is there a pause? Okay, so then the next part is we're going to take the y to the third. It's inside the square root. And now we simplify each part of this. 5 times the square root of 4. That's 5 times 2, which is 10. So we're not going to have a coefficient on the inside. X to the fourth, that's even, so we're going to divide it by 2. So that leaves us x squared. The root drops off, and you have an x squared outside. Then we have y to the third. Y to the third is odd, so we're going to write a square root of y back on the inside. And then we're going to subtract this by 1. So 3 minus 1 is 2. So we're left with, break this up, square root of y squared. Now the 2 is even. We'll drop that. This becomes y, square root y. And now we put it all back together. We have a 10 on the outside. We have an x squared outside. We have a y outside. And then on the inside is just a square root of y. So this is the fully simplified form of the expression. Okay, the next section, and the next question here, number 2, assuming x and y are both positive, write the following expression in simplest radical form. Okay, we'll start again. Let's pull all the coefficients out. So we really just have the square root of 175. Then we also have x to the third is on the inside. And then we have, last we have y and y to the sixth. Okay, now when I look at the square root of 175, that can be factored out as the square root of 25 times the square root of 7. Okay, and then square root of 25, that's 5. You're not going to be able to simplify the square root of 7 any further, so it's the square root of 7. Then we go to the x here. X to the third is odd, so we're going to write this off as the square root of x squared times the square root of x. Square root of x squared is even, so you divide it by 2. That gives you an x. Square root of x stays. And then we go to the y's. Y times square root of 6. 6 is even, so we'll divide it by 2. This gives us y times y to the third. That drops off the root. And then y to the first times y to the third is y to the fourth. Bring this all back together. We have a 5. We have an x. And we have a y to the fourth all on the outside. On the inside, we're going to have 7x. And last example, we have 8 and 125. So we're going to do square root of 125. For my x's, I have an x to the 6th. And then my y's, I have a y to the 3rd and a square root of y to the 3rd. Okay. Branching this off, we're going to have 8 times square root of 25 times square root of 5. Okay, this is 8 times 5 times the square root of 5. 8 times 5 is 40. And square root of 5, you can't simplify that any further. I move to the x's. I notice the x has an even, so we'll divide it by 2. That's going to give us x to the third. That drops off the square root. On the y's, I have a y to the third still, multiplied by this y to the third is going to be branched as y square root of y squared times the square root of y. Square root of y squared, that's even, so we'll divide it by 2. So this is going to give us y to the third times y times the square root of y. And then y to the third times y to the first is y to the fourth. And the square root of y stays. And then we'll bring it all back together. 40 x to the third y to the fourth times the square root of 5y.